My thing is this, I went from death to life. Death to life. And I say that because of the fact that about 15 months ago, I was faced with charges that had multiple life sentences. And that's a death sentence for me. And I went around and started looking, my family started looking. We looked from Denver to Colorado Springs and looking all over for lawyers. We set appointments up with 5 of the top lawyers in Colorado. Met with them. None of the lawyers that I met with were, to me, personal. None of them had the passion or the compassion that I was looking for. I mean, literally, I sat with some of these lawyers, and right up front, for the first 45 minutes to an hour, they asked questions. You know, what is this about? You know, what is the charges? And I had already talked to their office the day before, or the couple days before, set up appointments. But when I got there, they didn't seem to know anything about the case, which was shocking to me. So after meeting some of those lawyers, I talked to my family and some of the supporters, and they said, I mean, they're asking for an enormous amount of money, and yet they had not even researched your case or anything. So then I was just praying, you know, trying to figure out, where do I go next, Lord? And then a dear friend of mine, I called that person, and I called him and I said, you know, this is my situation. I don't know where to turn. And he recommended me to call Joe and Kimberly Maher. And as soon as I did, that night, I called Joe. Joe answered the phone. I spent probably about 45 minutes to an hour on the phone with him. He shared with me, let's get together tomorrow morning. Set an appointment up. I came in the next day at about 10 in the morning. He spent the next 3 hours with me. And you know what was surprising to me? When I got to his office, he had a stack of file of about maybe ½ an inch of my records already. He had it laid out here on the desk, and I was shocked that he actually went and pulled public records of me, pulled the charges, pulled everything out, and he had it laid out already. And when we started talking, I mean, he was so compassionate, you know, and he listened to me. You know, it wasn't just about the charges, it wasn't about the money, it was about me. And that's what made the difference. I knew at that moment that he had my back, and he was for me and not against me. I mean, I was facing the fight of a lifetime, you know, and these allegations were false. I knew that, but when I got to meet with these lawyers, I mean, automatically, you know, it's like they assume you're guilty before proven innocent, right? And when I met with Joe right away, he believed me. He looked me straight in the eyes, and he told me, he said, John, I will go with you into the trenches. And he says, the day that we go to trial, if you choose us, he says, I'll be right there with you. And it was not just Joe, it was actually his wife, Kimberly, the both of them that said, you know what, you're not alone in the court case. We're going to be there with you. And they were right there with me. From the moment I was looking for lawyers, I was looking for help. I mean, it literally felt like it was hopeless. Like, where do I turn? I mean, I didn't even know what to do, where to go. I lost my house, lost my job. My car got repossessed. I lost our medical benefits all in 1 week. I mean, it was horrific, the most horrific time I've ever been through. And if somebody out there right now is looking for a lawyer, looking for somebody to defend them and to go into the trenches with them, I urge them to look at Joe and Kimberly Maher. What a difference. It was night and day. I mean, literally it was night and day. The other guys I met with, you know, they usually give you, they say, a free consultation, 45 minutes to an hour. Basically, it was just kind of questions, you know, they asked, and it didn't seem very personal. It didn't seem like they actually cared about me. And because right towards the end, they say, okay, well, this is our retainer fee, this is what we charge, this typical case, you know, and I'm like, okay. I said, but I mean, do you feel like you believe me? Do you feel like you can win this case? And none of them said that. When I met with Joe, you know, that first impression was, I'm here for you. He already did research about it. He already pulled up what he could. It showed me that, man, he was ready to go to war and to battle for me, man. So the ordeal was longer than I expected, right? I thought it would be a kind of a 6 months, be done and over. It's been a total of 15 months, 15 months having to go through that. And both Kimberly and Joe and their law firm were so professional. They met every time I called, they answered the calls. They had questions. Joe even gave me his personal cell phone. He said, call me anytime you need it. I don't care what time of the day. And that made a difference, because there had been times that I felt like I needed to call Joe now, and there were some things, I won't get into it, but my case was the largest case in the county. And I felt like, I just felt trapped. I didn't know what to do, where to turn. And so every time I contacted them, they were right there. They had the answers for me. They comforted me in a sense that, don't worry, John, we got your back. We are defending you. If anybody questions you, you have them call me. It's very straightforward. They were empathetic towards me from the beginning. And I asked them straight up, I said, do you believe me? And Joe and Kim would say, oh yeah, we believe you. We know you're innocent, and we're willing to fight for you. And that was the big difference. The other people, when I asked them that, they said, well, we'd have to look at the case. I'm like, okay. Well, I'm standing in front of you. I'm the case, And so Joe and Kimberly, I mean, literally, there had been times where I had to show up at court and I had to ask them, can you give me a ride, back to my car or something, right? And they did. I mean, they went above and beyond. They really did. I'll tell you, there was anxiety, there was fears. I will tell you, Joe was straight up. He didn't sugarcoat it. He did not water it down. He told me straight up after, we were working together and after the first 3-hour conversation, he even said straight to me, John, one of two things are going to happen when we walk into the trial walk out of the trial that day. Either you and I walk out together, or I'm going to walk out alone. But I'm telling you now, I'm going to fight for you, and I'm going to be right there. I'm going to lock arms with you, and I'm going to defend you, and I'm going to pull everything that I can out of these records and I'll look through that. And so he did. And so when it came to the trial, there had been a couple times we had to be moved out. The DA moved it out. Others, things that have happened. They couldn't get witnesses, whatever they were trying to do. And so, yeah, there was some anxiety, just a prolonged, waiting and waiting. But at the same time, Joe and Kimberly were there. I could call them or text them at any time, and they were there to answer my questions. They were very thorough. Like every time, one of the, whatever hearing or motions was going on after the court case, immediately they called me, went over the details, explaining it, making sure I understood what the judge meant, what the DA said and all that. Literally, I was feeling fearful, and this is the first time I've ever gone through something like this. And so I didn't understand the process, and so they walked me through it. They're going to do the jury selection. They're going to have 55 jurors come in. And so they walked through what they did. And I'll tell you, I literally sat next to them and I watched how they did things, and they worked so well together. They were so orderly. Kimberly had certain color highlighters that was marking certain things, passed it to Joe. Joe would mark it with another highlighter. When it came down to the jury selection, the DA, I listened to how he questioned them compared to how Joe questioned them. I mean, they were so professional and they were so to the point. They didn't just ask questions, throw questions out there in general. They were very honed in. And Joe did a lot of the questions for the jury selection when he went up there, and I was surprised. I was very surprised how professional he was, but how good he was. And when he asked these questions, he was expecting a direct answer. With the district attorney, that didn't happen. Their questions were all over the place, So I was very nervous, but then I started thinking, as I'm looking at all of these jurors sitting there, that I thought, man, my life is in their hands. And then I look over at Joe and Kimberly, and I'm reminded that God had a divine appointment, that I got to meet them, and that they have been fighting on my behalf, and they have been preparing. When I walked into that courtroom, they had probably 4 stacks of bins with all these 3-inch binders. I mean, they were so prepared. They had them stacked up in order. I mean, everything. I had not ever expected that. You watch TV, you watch lawyers. You did not expect them to be so thorough, and they really were. They really were, and that's what pretty much comforted me, to know that, man, they were asking direct questions and good questions, not wasting the jurors' time or anybody else's time, but being able to handpick. And when they were done, they knew exactly. They had a whole chart. They had charted it out, and I was like, man, they are good. They are really good to be able to do that. And the jurors that they selected, I was on the side putting notes as I was hearing the questions. And probably over half of them was what I was like, I want that person. I look, oh, they're picking that person. So it was very comforting that first day of the jury selection and all, and then moving into the actual trial, which I'll be honest with you, I wasn't as nervous after that. The nervousness had left, the anxiety had left, because I had seen how prepared they were, and what they had been preparing to do, and the way they were questioning. Even when we started getting into the trial, the witnesses would take the stand, and I was listening to the DA and others asking questions, and I would take notes, and I'm thinking to myself, it didn't seem professional, it didn't seem pointed, it's kind of general, it's like a shotgun, way of doing things. But when Joe then went up there, he literally knew what he was asking for and what he was looking for, and he was building my case. Unbelievable. And I sat there and I started, I'll tell you, after the first day, I was not nervous to go back every day. I felt much more confident, and I knew that God had brought them into my lives. They have their own personality, they have their own way of questioning, and one of the things is they don't have to, they're not using all their notes, they're not having to read the question. They're literally like they're having a conversation with them. And I just watched how Joe went up there. I'll just be honest with you, I'm more fearful of Joe than Kimberly. The reason why is when he goes up there, man, he just looks you straight in the eyes and he asks you straight up, is that the truth? And then these people are like, you could see they're deceptive in certain areas, and Joe brought it out. He really did. Kimberly was more, you know, she's motherly, she's a little bit different, but she's very to the point too. And so when she asked the question, she's smiling and asking the questions, and so she's leading them, and they're just giving out information. I'm like, man, it is very, I mean, it was such an ordeal and an experience that I never expected to, you know, be going through. But now that I have, I mean, I'm grateful for both of them, definitely. I had an excellent outcome. Like I said in the beginning, from death to life. I'll never forget when the judge said, you know, Mr. Modern is facing multiple life sentences. Man, I just teared up, and I thought, man, this is so crazy. And as I looked at the jurors that were selected, and they were sitting up there, you know, I mean, you could see that they were interested in what Joe and Kimberly were doing, and they were interested in the facts and the truths. With the DA, I saw a couple times when he was up there speaking and asking questions, they were actually dozing off. And I'm thinking, that's not good, you know? But yeah, I had a very good outcome. You know, I was headed for a death sentence. And because of Joe and Kimberly's professionalism, I believe their passion for what they do, and even their compassion for me as their client, I didn't feel like their client. I mean, honestly, I felt like they were like a family member defending me. I really did. And even to today, I get choked up every time, you know, I start thinking about what they've done for me, and how looking for lawyers, I could not have found one better than Joe and Kimberly. It was 4 days into the trial, and like I said, Joe, they were building this case, and they were bringing out the deception and some of the things that they were trying to, I mean, the district attorney literally tried to even put in evidence that was not part of evidence, and asked them, you know, they said, oh, they have these pictures, asked the forensic analysis to tell them, aren't you the one who took these pictures? And she looked at him and she says, no, I didn't. And Joe had already, and Kimberly said, those pictures are not from the search warrant they did on your home. Found out that they were pictures that were taken a month later that they tried to put in. So Joe then brought that out. I mean, they brought so many things out, and just the way they did it. I mean, they were, because I would be like taking notes. I'm like, oh, somebody should mention this. And then Kimberly would be like, don't worry, that's coming up. This is not the right witness for that. So they were very prepared. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they laid it out there. After it was done and the jurors were dismissed and they were walking out, and we were pulling all these cases of files out, probably 4 or 5 of the jurors, I mean, looked at Joe and they waved to them and they smiled to him and they just nodded like, we knew that you guys proved his innocence, you know, beyond a shadow of a doubt. And so that was huge. Absolutely. You know, I would say if you're looking for a lawyer, if right now your life is on the line and you're facing the kind of charges that I face, I mean, I had 5 charges that they put up against me, right? And if you're facing those kind of charges, I'm telling you now, stop looking. Don't look any further. Contact Joe and Kimberly, contact Maher and Maher, because of the fact that they will serve you well. And if you want somebody that will stand in your court and fight in the trenches for you, Joe and Kimberly are the ones. I mean, they're not paying me to do this. I'm telling you this because I know I was in the fight of a lifetime. And if I know what I went through and what I had to go through, the anxiety, the fears, and to be on the other side from death to life, to be able to share this with others, I'm telling you, stop wasting your time. You need to contact Joe and Kimberly. I mean, I wish I could do more for them because they did so much for me. You know, and I can count on 2 hands in the last 15 months who was really in my court and on my side. Joe and Kimberly are the 2 that were. I know it for a fact, and it's proven. You know, they prove, and now my records are sealed. I mean, they went even one step further to seal everything to get this taken care of right away. You know, and so, I mean, I'm telling you, there's no one better. No one better than Maher Maher for sure. I want to say to you right now, I know what you're going through. I've been there. I went through 15 months of hell on earth, in a sense, having charges against me. And you're looking for someone who can defend you, someone who will be with you in the trenches. Like I mentioned earlier, I went from death to life with Maher and Maher. Because of Joe and Kimberly and they defending me, I'm here today to tell you, stop looking. You've looked enough. Go to Joe and Kimberly, contact them today.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Maher.
And I'm Joe Maher.
And we are Maher Maher Law. If you have a case and need serious representation from people who care, give us a call at Maher Maher Law.
We look forward to talking to you.